film was so hot, I opened Hinge like it was Deliveroo the second the credits rolled. Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. First YouTube video of the year. Well, if you exclude the podcast, yes, this is the first YouTube video of the year. And I wanted to start this series because it's no secret if you follow me on Instagram that I go to the cinema a lot. Look, I'm a single girlie living alone in London. The cinema is my natural habitat. And I've had more requests on Instagram to talk about the films that I go see more, but I always find with short form content on Instagram, it's quite hard to actually really get into my thoughts and feelings and stuff. So that's what this series is for. So on the first Sunday of every month, I will basically go through and review every film that I saw at the cinema in the previous month. This being the first one. So let's get straight into it, and if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe. I feel like, oh my god, I've not said this in so long. Also, if you're new here, maybe check out my podcast as well. It's pretty great if I do say so myself. And here is a review of every film that I saw in the cinema in January. Okay, first things first, I know that a lot of you are probably watching this to maybe decide whether you want to go see a film. So I am going to keep my review spoiler free, but if I do feel like I do need to maybe tell a spoiler in order to like get my point across, I will do it at the end of that review and I will tell you the timestamp on the screen of where to skip to for the next one. I've learnt my lesson about giving spoilers on Instagram. Don't worry, I'm trying to be better. So the first film that I went to see in January, well, the whole of 2025, was NOSFERATU. And when I say it was the first film, I literally mean I kicked people out of my house at 10 AM on New Year's Day to go to the cinema and see it on my own. Your girl was dedicated, I really was. Literally, as the cinema was opening, I was like the first screening, I was one of the first people queued up outside. Obviously it's NOSFERATU as well, so it's just me and all the goths, and I'm like, hey guys! But I would just start by saying I absolutely loved this film. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it! And I feel bad starting with this one because every other film after this just doesn't compare. Like, yeah, the other films are good, but they don't compare to NOSFERATU, in my humble opinion. NOSFERATU is a film that I've been waiting to come out for a long, long time. I love gothic horror. I love Robert Eggers as a director, and a lot of the cast I was very excited to see in this role and see what they would bring to it. Because obviously this is the third reiteration of NOSFERATU, and I was really interested to see how they would do it to make it appeal to a modern audience, because there is a big difference between horror and gothic horror, and I do feel like gothic horror appeals less to the general population. So I was really surprised to see the general public craving a bit of gothic horror. Look, in these trying times, the general public yearn for a bit of gothic horror. Now, obviously, the story of NOSFERATU is very, very similar, and by similar, I mean basically the same, legally anyway, to Dracula. Promise I won't stay too long on this, but a tiny little bit of NOSFERATU lore is that the original NOSFERATU film was ordered to be destroyed in a court of law. So Bram Stoker, who was the creator of the original Dracula, his widow sued the creator of the original NOSFERATU and said, this has ripped off my husband's film. This has ripped off Dracula. So I went to court, and obviously it was decided, yes, this is very much a rip-off. The story is kind of the same. But the creators of NOSFERATU didn't have any financial compensation to offer them. They couldn't afford to pay out for this. So they basically decided that every copy of NOSFERATU would have to be destroyed. But this is the thing about lost media. It doesn't always work. In fact, it often doesn't work. You can watch the whole of the original NOSFERATU film for free on YouTube. So you might have noticed in the credits, that's why it came up, inspired by or thanks to Bram Stoker's Dracula or something like that. That's why. But the first thing that I really loved about this film was the acting. There was not a single member of that cast that was not pulling their weight. Everyone brought their own unique talent and their own unique skill to that set and to that character. Bill Skarsgård, we all know, the horror king. He's such a professional of his craft. Like, I knew he was going to be amazing, but he just brought such like an overpowering doom. He had this sense about him when he was NOSFERATU. Like, he was horrifying. Like, I struggled to look at him because I felt like he was just towering over me. But then at the same time, I also couldn't not look at him because I was just mesmerised. He was just absolutely fantastic. And also, he's so dedicated to his craft. I mean, the whole cast were, but Bill in particular worked with an opera coach to safely lower his voice a whole octave. I know everyone's probably seen the "you must bounce on it" crazy styles. Everyone's seen that guy doing that voice on TikTok, right? But obviously manipulating your vocal cords in that way to such a low tone for a whole day on set, day after day, is very actually dangerous on your vocal cords. So he worked with an opera coach to safely lower his vocal cords, to lower his voice a whole octave for the character of NOSFERATU. And Absolutely, just what dedication. Actually, I've got to take a second to say it. I know I said I wouldn't ramble and I'd try and be concise, but this will just have to be a longer video because I am pissed at how snubbed the cast of NOSFERATU were at the Oscars. I'm sorry. Did we watch the same film? Why has Lily Rose Depp not got a nomination for her role in NOSFERATU? She was outstanding. Outstanding! And there are so many different layers to her role and the way that she played it, but in particular her physical performance is something that really captured me. What she was able to achieve with her body, particularly within the multiple possession scenes, was not only a great skill and a fantastic talent to bring to set, but it was so important within the role that she was playing because of the cultural and social context of the role of her character. NOSFERATU is quite literally a physical manifestation of all of those misunderstood, primal lusts, urges and desires of women, and namely Victorian women of the time of this story. The story is a presentation of Victorian fears. Very, very common theme within Gothic horror. So the way that Lily was able to use her physical performance to portray this outside of the male lens gaze, which normally looks upon desire and lust and urges, it's so crucial to the story itself. The desire is possession. That's why when she's being possessed, her eyes are rolling back in her head, her tongue is hanging out of her body, spit is pouring out of her. Like, it's not pretty, it's not sexy. This is what NOSFERATU is. It is primal, disgusting, ungodly urge. That's what it is. That is the essence of NOSFERATU. And the way that Lily was able to physically portray that in her body did so much to elevate this story and to help you understand the characters, namely NOSFERATU as well, but also his relationship to Lily. Not pretty, it's not sexy, it's carnal. And often that is harder to portray than sexy. Other things I loved about the film, and my dad mentioned this when I spoke to him about it as well, was how long some of the scenes were. I am finding that really challenging when watching newer, mainly like TV and film these days, and I feel really like snobby and like whatever sayings, but it does feel like TV is being made for more of a shorter attention span, TikTok style audience. People who are used to watching a TikTok edited in CapCut with like 15 different shots within the space of like 10 seconds. And I did see an article the other day that backs this up, that said that Netflix has asked its creators to start creating their content, bearing in mind that people may not be watching and maybe on their phones. I need to do a whole other video about the death of media literacy, but that's not for today. But yes, I love those longer scenes. It gave me proper like old horror vibes. Another integral part of the film was not only the costume but also the hair and makeup, and I was really happy to see that those two departments did get nominated for the Oscars and for the BAFTAs. I think that's very important. Not just because of the period nature of the film, obviously there was like some really beautiful period dresses, but Bill Skarsgård himself also did say that when he was trying to get into the role of NOSFERATU, a lot of it felt very abstract, and when he was doing a lot of his tests and a lot of his rehearsals, none of it was really coming together until that day where he did a full dress rehearsal, and it all came together by the work that the makeup and the costume department did on him. So it cannot be understated. Yes, Bill's talent, phenomenal. I would probably say a once in a generation horror talent, but also what costume and makeup bring to the film. They also got a cinematography nomination, which I was really happy because it was so beautiful. Oh my god, there was one scene that I was literally just sat there like a gasp, and it was the crossroads scene where he's travelling to Count Orlok's castle. Obviously there were so many beautiful scenes throughout the film, particularly the hand shadow across the town. Oh, chills. So many beautiful scenes, but I'm thinking particularly of the crossroads scene. That was so beautiful, and the way that they really put so much time and care and attention to detail into filming that, and they created that using light, and I think that is so important to credit. I really feel like I'm going on a bit of a tangent about the film industry here, but in this day and age where so many films are starting to incorporate AI more and more, and we've seen it for years, the way film is leaning more and more on CGI. I always have such a great deal of respect for film creators and directors and cinematographers who do not shy away from the work that comes from using practical effects and lighting on screen. I think that's one of the really underrated things about Wicked, to be honest, actually. The amount of practical effects that were used, minimal CGI, no AI. That's what I want to see from my best-selling films, you know? But the thing I love particularly anyway about the crossroads scene was it looked stunning, beautiful. Yes, it literally looked like it had come out of a gothic horror novel. It's physically stunning to look at, but it created that sense of dread that is so important with making a gothic horror movie. And with this scene in particular, it was literally a crossroads scene. This is a scene where Thomas is going... Is this a spoiler? Not a spoiler. You know he's going to Count Orlok's castle. He's going to see Count Orlok for the first time, but it's not a spoiler. I had to check then. This is more about how it physically looks rather than the plot anyway. But this is when he is going to Count Orlok's castle. He's near the end of his journey. He's exhausted. He's really been through the ringer. So obviously in a literal sense, there is the literal crossing of the roads, the end of a journey. But what they were able to create with the lighting and the way it physically looked was that sense of dread and that sense of otherworldly sort of almost paranormal crossing into a whole other world. You felt like once you were crossing down this road and you get into that carriage, you are no longer in your world, you are no longer in your domain, you are in Count Orlok's domain. And that's when things start to get more and more creepy and sinister and darker, and the way that they were able to convey all of those feelings by the way that largely by the way they lit the set, phenomenal. Oh, and also the lens that they use. They created their own lens to light the nighttime scenes, because that's another thing I get really pissed off with films. When the nighttime scenes are so fucking dark, I can't see a fucking thing. I don't care, you've got budget, light the bitch up. I really loved it. They created their own blue light lens, so when it was the nighttime scenes, it wasn't as just black and white. Everyone's skin was kind of illuminated to this gorgeous blue colour, and it just gave it such a feel. Now, would I recommend this film? If I turned around and said no after the way I've just literally been up its arse, I think it would be hilarious. But as you can probably guess, yes, I would recommend this film. If you are someone who loves horror, particularly gothic horror, if you are someone who wants to see good acting, cinematography, if you want to see modern cinema at its best, yes, I would absolutely recommend this film. But even the best films, the films that I love, aren't for everybody. Everyone has different tastes, so I wouldn't recommend this film if you are someone who wants really fast-paced, blockbuster-style movie. If you are someone who goes to watch a horror film because you want a load of jump scares, probably not the film for you. Because yes, it is horror, but it is gothic horror, and there is quite a difference in those two genres. Yes, they all fall under the same umbrella, but gothic horror is such a unique subsection of that. But NOSFERATU, 5 stars. 5 stars from me, baby. The second film that I saw this month was We Live in Time. First of all, and I'm speaking directly to the agents of Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield now, can you put these babes in a rom-com next? Every time I see these babes on screen, they're suffering. They're in some kind of suffering, and like, we've got two beautiful babes here, two beautiful British babes, Andrew Garfield, Florence Pugh. Please put them in a rom-com. I beg of you, put them in a rom-com. I don't want to see them suffer no more. The film felt really homely to me. I don't know why. I don't know whether it was because it really did give kind of, not independent, but like, it really did give like film for homely British movie vibe. And I think in tradition with film for kind of like style of cinema, it wasn't like a huge blockbuster that I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. I think because they are such big names now, I think people maybe expected it to be like this huge blockbuster with a load of these really big like Hollywood style scenes, but the film wasn't really like that, and I'll be honest, I was really grateful. I think it worked for the plot. Now, general sort of plot summary without any spoilers is this young couple are navigating life and looking back on their relationship, and we are seeing their relationship as Florence Pugh's character, who is the woman in the relationship of the two pair, she has been diagnosed with cancer. So the reason why I think keeping this film more sort of smaller scale and it not being this big flashy Hollywood blockbuster, I personally think it worked because I think it helped to bring back the humanity and the more sort of very basic principles of the story, which are love and life. Everything else is kind of stripped back, and we are ultimately just seeing these two people navigate mortality as it's creeping up on them. And the film is also not shown in chronological order, which is a twist. I do feel like it confused some people. I could literally hear there was an elderly couple next to me in the cinema who were also, by the way, so rude. They kept getting their phones out and like was like halfway through was like, I think I'm gonna go get a drink, and I was like, okay, fucking, can you do it quietly? But yeah, I think it not being in chronological order did confuse some people. I thought it was fairly easy to keep up with. You just have to pay attention. But I think it helped with the messaging of the film, because the messaging of the film is life and living. If the film had been in chronological order, it would have followed that natural progression of life, prognosis, end of film. but by not having it in chronological order and having all of these moments be kind of like jumbled up. Don't get me wrong, it's not a mess, but it is a little bit of like a jumble of their life, the way the story is told. It helps to put life at the front of it, and cancer is kind of just something that is there, and it's a big huge part of the story, but ultimately this story is about the relationship with these two people, and that was put at the forefront. Okay, I've got something that I need to say about this film, but it is a spoiler, so I'm going to put a time stamp on the screen here for where you can skip to the next chapter so that you don't hear the spoiler. But there is a huge point in the plot near the end of the film where Almut, who is Florence Pugh's character, she chooses, when she basically knows that her life is coming to an end soon at some point that year, she chooses to compete in this cooking competition rather than get married to Andrew Garfield's character. And it is a really controversial point in the film. One, because my friend Lana was like, why couldn't they just rearrange the wedding? Like, I know they probably wouldn't be able to have the same wedding, but they could go to a registry office pretty much any day of the week, right? I don't know. I don't quite know how much planning goes into a very quick, simple ceremony like that. But anyway, but it really is quite controversial, especially the scene and the way it plays out, because they have this argument where all of these emotions are fizzling up and fizzling up to the brim. And ultimately, Florence Pugh's character says, I don't want to die just being someone's dead fucking mum. It's literally what she says. She wants to die, yes, as a loving mother, but also as her own person, and she wants her daughter to grow up to be able to remember her for having her own life and her own achievements. And as someone who, me personally, I don't want to have kids, and now that I approach my 30s, I'm 30 next year, I'm thinking about what does that mean for me as a woman who wants to make that decision to not be a wife and not be a mother. And it would have been so easy for this film to show her marry Andrew Garfield, and it be a lovely thing that happens, but for this woman who is, you know, nearing the end of her life. But for her to actually say, no, I'm nearing the end of my life and I want to make this decision for me, and by proxy it also gives my daughter a mirror to look to so that she knows that she can be her own independent person. Such a powerful choice of the film. Honestly, that bit for me was the bit that got me the most, and I was thinking about it for like a week after. I thought it was so powerful. And then obviously the way they handled her death scene as well. I was very, very glad they didn't show the actual death scene. We didn't see her die. There is a beautiful montage, I don't know if you've seen it, but there is a beautiful montage where earlier in the film she speaks about how she gave up ice skating when she was younger because after her own dad died, it didn't feel right, because she used to ice skate with her dad used to take her to practice and stuff like that. So for her death scene, it is quite similar to After Sun, where he's saying goodbye to her at the airport. It's very metaphorical, where she's basically ice skating with her daughter, and Andrew Garfield. This is Andrew Lincoln. I don't know where that came from. But she's ice skating with her family, and at the end she stays on the ice, waves goodbye to them, and that's it. That's the metaphor for the death scene, and I thought it was really beautifully, really sensitively handled. But yeah, would I recommend this film? Yeah, I would. I would give a massive caveat and maybe a trigger warning that it is very emotional. But I think it is maybe a really nice film to watch maybe on like a quiet afternoon, a quiet weekend afternoon. For me, the winning scene really was where she decided to do the cooking competition instead of the wedding. I think that is such an important film. To see a main character, a female lead, make that decision for herself, I think is so important, and for me that actually makes the film a triumph. The third film I saw this month was Baby Girl. So just to summarise my thoughts on Baby Girl, I'm going to read you my letterbox review. This film was so hot I opened Hinge like it was Deliveroo the second the credits rolled, and I was tipsy when I wrote that, and I stand by it. Everyone has been talking about this film. Obviously it's got Father Figure by the beautiful George Michael trending again, which is always a bonus. But is it as good as the hype? From what I've seen of people's thoughts of this film, it's very divisive. A lot of people went mainly for either the main character, what's his name, George Harrison? I feel like I've got that completely wrong. I feel like Harrison is in there somewhere, right? Harrison Dick. I'm completely making up this man's name. I've got to find it out now. Your tiny hair is plays Samuel. Kraken. But yes, does it live up to the hype? I feel like it's very, very divisive, right? I feel like people who went for the sexy scenes and for the lovely Harris Dickinson were very satisfied. And then there was also a few people as well who were saying like, I didn't really get it. I felt like not much really happened. And I feel like I can kind of understand where both people are coming from. I personally enjoyed it. I loved the sexy scenes, but also I do think there is another layer to the film which isn't just, you know, like rom-com smut basically. And I do think it was a good basic exploration about female shame and sexual desire. I don't think the film quite explored it to the depths that it could have done, I will say that. But I did think it was a very good basic level exploration for a general population audience. It's very hard to maybe make a film like that and also have it apply to the general population, because you have this woman who is literally, she's like what? She's a CEO. She's like powerful in her job, and she's got this perfect family, and she's rich, and she's got everything everyone could ever want, right? But she still can't quite communicate her desires and what she wants and what she's lusting after. And the film literally opens with her faking an orgasm with her husband and then having to go and in the next room afterwards. Yeah. To hardcore pornography, by the way, nonetheless. And she meets this lovely Harris Dickinson, and she meets him while he is controlling and commanding a dog, and she thinks, you know what? What might be in that dog, actually? Which is so fucking real. So fucking real. Yeah, and then they then enter basically an affair and also this kind of power play sub-dom sort of relationship. But what I did really like about the film, above just some of the scenes being quite sexy, is the earlier parts of the film where she's really struggling to communicate her desires, not just to her husband. She does try to her husband, but she can't quite get it out. She's still got so much shame embedded in her. But when she's trying to explore this with Harris's character, Samuel, she's trying to explore this with Samuel, and she still can't say what it is she wants, and he makes her spell it out. And I love those early scenes where he's not quite sure what she wants, and he feels a little bit awkward, and he's a bit laughing about it, and she's just totally embarrassed. And I loved that kind of awkwardness and the realism with navigating sexual relationships like this, because yeah, there are some really hot scenes in the film, but also I think more and above anything, it's about first of all, it's about like female shame in desire, which is but also just the very human element of awkwardness in sex and sexual relationships and dynamics. And I won't give away the ending, but ultimately we follow this woman on her journey to be able to communicate what she wants in the bedroom. Would I recommend this film? Yeah. I think if you want a fun watch, I would actually really recommend maybe going and watch it with some friends. Definitely not one to watch with your parents, I would say. Like, I've got a good relationship with my parents, but I would prefer to watch this one solo, I'm not gonna lie. But I think if you are interested in those themes, and if you are interested in kind of have some understanding or appreciation for sort of like sub-dom relationships, then yeah, I would maybe recommend going to see it. And I say that particularly because I saw some people criticising it, being like, oh, she's degrading herself and blah 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 blah, and they even make a point in the film where Sam, the character played by Harris Dickinson, says that's a very regressive and small-minded way to look at this kind of sexual relationship. And it, as I said before, the film really only scratches the surface on that topic, but it does a good job, at least on the surface, of expressing that. The fourth film I saw this month was Wolfman. I saw this film in 4DX. I got thrown around like a little bitch. I was basically like Nicole Kidman in Baby Girl, the way I got thrown around in that screening. Now, my bugbear before the film even began with this one was they gave away too much in the damn trailer, and they've done the same thing with a film I really want to see next month in February, Companion. I'm so excited to see Companion, but they gave way too much away in the original trailer, so much so that they've actually gone back and edited the trailer and put out a new one, because the one that I saw in the cinema the other night is not the one that was originally shown. So I don't know whether my review is kind of skewed by the trailer a little bit, because it did really bugbear me. But essentially the basic plot is this young family go to stay in the forest, and there is a creature in the woods. And this is not a spoiler because it says it in the trailer. The dad gets infected by the creature. Now, my first big bit of criticism with the film is that the plot is very predictable. Like, you know where it's going, nothing about it surprised me. I knew what was going to happen as it was happening, and even way before. So while the story and the plot wasn't really that much of a thrill, it didn't necessarily make it a bad film, and there were things that definitely made up for that. I think the strong elements of this film were definitely in Chris Abbott's performance, who plays the dad. He was outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. And I think what made him outstanding was, obviously we've seen so many werewolf performances, so many different werewolf transformations, but what really set this film apart in terms of the werewolf element in particular was that it wasn't just a quick bite and no transformation. You slowly watch this man get more and more sick throughout the film, and you don't know when he's going to turn. It is more of a sickness, and you are just slowly watching this man become more and more sick and less human throughout the film. And the way that he managed to convey this in his physical performance and just his performance in general was, yeah, really, really powerful and really the strong part of the film for me. And then the cinematography was beautiful as well. There are some really beautiful shots of the forest, and also the opening shot with is it the bees getting the revenge on the hornet or something like that, which is a metaphor for family and looking out for your family. I mean, it's very on the nose, but it looks beautiful on the screen. But the cinematography in particular, the way that they show, because it switches between perspectives from his perspective to the family's perspective, and you see him slowly getting more and more ill, and the way that he's seeing the room and the world in general is changing. I thought that was really beautiful done. That was really interesting. Would I recommend this film? Look, I think if you like horror, I don't think you'd regret watching it. I think if you've got a spare 2 hours or so, or a Saturday night, and you want something to watch, and you want a bit of a thrill, bit of a jump, might be a fun film to watch with your friends or your partner or whatever. But I know the cinema is very expensive these days, especially if you don't have like an unlimited card like I do, you don't have a subscription, and also people are busy, and there's so many incredible films out this year that you are going to have to pick between a few of them. And I think unfortunately this film is maybe more of a wait till it comes out watching from home and prioritise some of the other films that are coming out. Don't think it's an inherently bad film, I just wouldn't put it at the top of your priority list. The 5th film I saw this month was A Real Pain by Jesse Eisenberg. First of all, this film, the perfect length for a film, hour and a half. Oof! I love an hour and a half film, I do. General sort of plot of this film is you have Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, who, by the way, I can't believe I'm going to admit this, is so embarrassing. I've just found out there's 2 Kieran Culkins. The kid who was in Home Alone. I was never really that into Home Alone. I literally watched it for the first time the other year at Christmas. I didn't realise he's got a brother and there's 2 of them. How insane! But anyway, he plays Jesse Eisenberg's character's cousin. And they are meeting up to go on a little trip because their nan had died earlier in the year. And their nan was a Jewish woman from Poland. So they're basically going on this heritage trip around Poland to learn more about their Jewish history. First thing I'll say, the film is beautifully shot. They captured Poland really beautifully, and I'll be honest, it made me want to go. But more than that, the heart of this film really is the relationship between these 2 characters. So you've got Jesse's character and Kieran's character, the cousin. A really character-driven story. You've got Jesse's character, who is very straight up and down, very organised, very adult. He's just adulting. He's got his wife, he's got his kid, and then you've got Kieran's character, who has been really suffering the last few months. Kieran's character's been suffering a lot in the last few months, particularly since the loss of their grandmother, and just doesn't have a very good grasp on controlling his emotions. He is literally all of the time, I felt uncomfortable a lot of the time watching his performance, seeing him one minute going from being this most like charming, happy, lovely guy, especially because they go on a group trip as well with like strangers, seeing him going from being this lovely, charming, happy guy to being this like very aggravated, angry, like sad person. And there are so many points in the film where it's so embarrassing to watch because you're watching it and he's purposely creating this uncomfortable environment, and you're sitting there thinking, oh, please just shut up. Shut up, please shut up. Like, you can feel the tension. But I think the way that they show his pain through the film and you really get to the heart of that character is really, really beautiful. And I'll be honest, I saw a lot of myself in Kieran's character, and particularly the way that he kind of sees the world and the pain in it and understands the people around him. And he does have a great connection with people and he's really great at getting to people. But sometimes I think his emotions a lot of the time get the better of him, and he really struggles to compute that and process that and deal with that. And I did see a lot of myself in Kieran's character. Maybe that's why I really liked it. And I think their contrasting characters worked really, really well. Would I recommend the film? Yeah, I think I really would recommend this film, actually. I think if you want a more sort of heartwarming tale with a very simple plot, I will say plot-wise, not a lot particularly happens per se. Very, very character-driven work, but it's done really, really well, and it's a really good film. And I think if you want a short film that is more about that character, about that emotion, I would, yeah. Now, the 6th film that I saw this month was called Presents. And yep, this is another horror movie. But this one is really interesting and is actually quite different. It is a ghost story, but the whole film, and I mean every single shot from the opening to the end, is from the perspective of the ghost. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Peep Show, but you know those shots that they do where it's basically POV, like, yeah, like that. The whole entire film is like that. And the important thing is, you don't know who the ghost is until the very, very end. And I'm not going to spoil it for you here, but that's very crucial to the plot of the film. I think it was a bold choice to have every shot be from the ghost and to not just have even some other shots be from the other members of the family. Because also as well, that then reduces the film to one location. This whole film is shot inside this one house. So yeah, it could have proved tiring or maybe quite boring for some audience, but I thought it was a really brave, creative choice to make. And I think with ghost stories being such an oversaturated genre in general, but also particularly within horror, I did really generally think it was a breath of fresh air, and it was exciting, you know. I was intrigued as to what was going on. Looked visually great, and it really helped to create that sense of eeriness, and like, even though you were the person watching someone, because sometimes you'd literally just be in the corner of the room watching someone, even though you would be the person doing that, I would feel eerie. And there'd be a few shots where you could see the family members start to clock, I think someone's in the room, or they sense some kind of presence. They sense the presence, and you can see them maybe walking towards us, and I would suddenly be like, oh my god, they've seen us, they've seen us. Yeah, it really helped to create that eerie sense of dread of when you think you're being watched, even though you were the one watching. Felt very, very invasive in a good way for the film, and there were some scenes where I was like, oh my god, we need to get up, help, do something. We shouldn't just be sitting here. And most importantly, I thought it worked very, very well for the plot. I won't give away the plot twist, but if you know, you know. I didn't get it, to be honest, until the very, very last minute. I really, really liked it, and to be honest, I'm quite picky about plot twists that big, because for me, a plot twist has to be earned. It can't just be thrown in at the end to be like, whoa, ooh, what's happening? Ooh, pisses me the fuck off, right? A plot twist has to be earned, and when I thought back throughout the film, I thought, yeah, do you know what? They were breadcrumbing us, and it was there. You could see it was there, but you wouldn't notice that until the very end. And I was there, and I was like, oh, do you know what? Fair fucking play, yeah, do you know what? Fair play. I do think, however, if I was going to have some criticism, I would say that it didn't need to be as explicitly spelled out at the very end. There was obviously a bit of dialogue at the end where the plot twist is spelled out quite explicitly, and I just think that could kind of have been left. I personally like it when a film has quite an ambiguous ending. I don't know, I just think it leaves you with more questions on the film, and it gives you more to think about, and it's more open to interpretation. Absolutely didn't ruin the film for me, but if it was just me personally, I would have left it more ambiguous. I think it's really great when you get the viewer more indirectly involved in the film and in cinema by making them ask questions more about the film that they've just watched. Would I recommend Presents? Yes, I would. If you like ghost stories in particular, if you like horror films but you're getting a bit bored and you want something a bit different, you want something a little bit spice up the genre. But yes, absolutely, I would say go see it. It's really, really great. But I would say bear in mind the whole film shot from one POV in one location, and some of the shots are quite continuous. Now, I don't think that was a bad thing. I actually think that was a really good thing. But as we said at the start of the video, everyone likes different things from their film. And the seventh and final film I saw this month was Paddington in Peru. Look, we had to finish the month with a light kids film after all of the horror I've seen this month. It was one of those films I really felt like I could switch my brain off and just enjoy it. Because I do feel like I love to watch films that make me think a bit more or leave me, like Presents, leaving with more questions, and I like to think about the social context of the films and stuff like that. But sometimes it's just nice to watch a bit of Paddington, isn't it? It's a lovely, I think, family-friendly film, but I think it's also still really enjoyable for adults. Because I personally sometimes can hate a bit of cringe. I hate a bit of like corny family fun sometimes. I'm very, very picky on what family-friendly films I like. But I think Paddington strikes a good balance of being humorous for a wide genre of people. I will say I do not think it was good as the first two. I particularly love Paddington 2. I really do. I love Paddington 2 so much. It might be because of Hugh Grant, but I just love Paddington 2. But I still think it was really good. Obviously a completely different location. They go to Peru, so that was interesting. And it gave it a new kind of element to the film. It got it out in London. Saying that, one of the elements I really loved about the film was, I made a joke on Letterboxd about how this film is essentially about a first-generation immigrant who is struggling with his identity, so goes back to his homeland to try and connect with himself and grapple with all of these feelings about being someone who is moved to a whole different culture and is being taken in by another family and creating a new home. And that's a really powerful themes there, and some that are very, very relevant to a lot of people in the city that we live in. And I really loved how it put London like at the centre of that, and it really was a reminder actually of how immigration makes Britain, and particularly London. Our city only exists because of immigration, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, if Paddington 2 is about the prison industrial complex, then Paddington 3 is about a first generation immigrant who is struggling with his identity, and I think that is beautiful. And the thing is as well, I know there's going to be so many people who are like, oh, why do you have to make it political? It's just about a bear. Like, if you watch that film and you don't see those themes, I don't know what to tell you. Paddington is an immigrant and we welcome him. Those themes are there and they are glaringly obvious, but also it's a fun, family-friendly film that is just really enjoyable to watch. Olivia Colman, she's fucking brilliant as always. Would I recommend Paddington 3? I think yes. If you've got maybe young children to entertain, actually I can't speak on what entertains young children because I can't remember the last time I actually saw a child, to be honest with you. I cannot speak to what entertains children these days. But I do think if you're looking for a family-friendly film, whether your family is, you know, your partner and your kids, or whether your family is your group of friends in their late mid-20s, I think it's a great family-friendly, wholesome film, which does have an important messaging there as well. And that is my review of every film that I saw this month. If you were unsure about any of those films and you're thinking, oh, do I want to go watch it? Do I not? I hope this has helped you make up your mind. The cinema is such an incredible place, and I was, you know, really, and I think everyone was really worried about the state of film and cinema a few years ago, and I really hope that this sort of like resurgence in interest in cinema and people going to the cinema more is only going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Because I love the cinema and we want to see the film industry flourish. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!